Okay, gotta admit it. Sometimes I get totally lost when it comes to the future of money.
Yeah.
Like, are we all going to be, waving our phones around to pay for everything?
Right.
Are dollar bills going to be like collector's items? And what about all this cryptocurrency stuff?
Yeah.
It feels like everyone's talking about it, but no one really understands it.
It's a lot to unpack.
It really is.
Yeah.
So that's why today we're taking a deep dive into the world of money, like all kinds. The old school stuff and the new digital stuff. We've got research, articles, tons of opinions to help us make sense of it all.
It's a wild time to be thinking about money.
It is.
We're literally seeing a potential transformation in how we exchange value,
Yeah.
Like going from actual coins and paper to digital representations of value flying around the world in seconds.
It is kind of mind-blowing when you think about it like that.
It is.
But before we get too far into the digital stuff, let's start with the basics. What exactly is fiat currency?
Okay.
And how does it even work?
So fiat currency, that's basically the money we're all used to, right? Dollars, euros, whatever. Issued by governments, not backed by like gold or anything physical, really.
So its value comes from what? Our collective trust in the government.
Exactly. It's fascinating, like this giant unspoken agreement.
Yeah.
Like we all just decide that these pieces of paper or like the numbers in our bank account mean something.
So it's kind of like a shared story that we all believe in.
Totally, a social construct.
As long as everything keeps believing it, the system works.
As long as, that's the key.
Okay, I kind of get it. But, stories change, right?
Of course.
So has fiat currency always been the main system?
Oh, not at all. It's had a crazy history, really.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Early versions of paper money were in China, like 12th century.
Wow, it's a long time ago.
Way back. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. During the American Revolution, the continental dollar basically lost all its value.
Why? What happened?
They printed way too much of it, trying to fund the war.
Oh, so that's what they mean by, not worth a continental.
Exactly.
Ouch, that's a lesson right there.
Cautionary tale.
So how do we get from there to the system we use now?
Well, the U.S. Civil War had a big impact, actually.
Okay.
They introduced the greenbacks, which weren't backed by gold or silver.
Okay.
And that set a precedent. Then after World War II, the Bretton Woods Agreement, that kind of tied global currencies to the U.S. dollar, which was, at the time, pegged to gold.
Right.
But that whole system, it fell apart in the 1970s.
So the way money works today is only 50 years old.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's surprisingly recent.
It is. And it makes you wonder, if it's changed this much before, what's next?
Exactly. That's what I'm thinking about. Speaking of what's next, we're going to talk about digital currency.
Okay.
Every day there's news about Bitcoin or some new cryptocurrency. Is that really the future?
Cryptocurrency, it's definitely a hot topic. But it's not the only type of digital currency out there.
Right.
Oh, yeah. The money you have in your bank account, technically, that's digital, too.
Huh.
It's just centralized, controlled by the bank.
So most of the money we already use is digital in some way.
That's right. I think something like 90% of the world's money only exists as digital records. Only about 10% is like actual cash.
Wow. I had no idea. So what makes cryptocurrency different from the digital money we use every day?
It's all about decentralization. Cryptocurrencies, like Bitcoin, operate on a blockchain. Think of it like a giant digital ledger.
Okay.
It's basically a public record of every transaction, and it's constantly being verified by a network of computers. No single person or institution can control it.
So it's kind of like those old-fashioned accounting ledgers, but spread across a whole network.
You got it. That's why people say it's decentralized. No single entity, like a bank or government, is in charge.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But also, it sounds kind of complicated.
It can be, a little bit.
And a little scary, to be honest.
Sure.
Is there a simpler way to think about all this?
Imagine, a group of friends keeping track of who owes who money in a shared notebook. Everyone can see the entries, everyone agrees on the rules, and no one person can change the records without everyone else knowing. That's basically a blockchain, just on a much bigger, much more secure scale.
Ah, okay. I can picture that. So that's cryptocurrency. But what about those central bank digital currencies, CBDCs? I keep hearing about those. Are they the same thing?
Not exactly. CBDCs, those are being developed by governments all over the world. They're basically like digital versions of the dollar, the euro.
Oh, okay.
But potentially faster, more efficient transactions.
So governments are trying to make their own digital versions of the money we already use.
Pretty much, yeah.
But why?
Well, they want to keep up with this whole digital payments world,
Right.
improve efficiency,
Hmm.
maybe even reach people who don't have access to banks.
Okay, that makes sense.
But they also want to keep some control in this new digital age.
Right, because it's one thing for like regular people to be excited about digital currency,
Yeah,
but I'm sure governments are, a little wary of giving up too much control.
absolutely. That's a big factor. So you've got these decentralized cryptocurrencies on one side,
Right.
and you got these centralized CBDCs on the other.
Almost like a digital currency showdown.
It is a bit. And it'll be really interesting to see how those two approaches evolve.
Yeah, I'm curious too. But to understand what's really going on, we need to dig into how all this stuff is actually controlled.
Okay,
These control mechanisms, for both fiat money and digital.
you got it.
I'm always wondered, how do governments actually manage money? I mean, it
Man.
sometimes feels like they just print more whenever they want.
It's not quite that simple. Central banks have tools.
Okay.
One big one is interest rates.
Right.
They can lower rates to encourage people to borrow and spend money, which stimulates the economy, or they can raise rates to cool things down if inflation gets too high.
Yeah, I've definitely heard about interest rates going up and down. But what else can they do?
Open market operations. This is where they buy or sell government bonds. Buying bonds puts money into the economy. Selling them takes money out.
So it's like adjusting the flow of water in a pool to keep the level right.
Exactly. It's all about balance.
Okay. But how does any of that work with digital currencies, especially the decentralized ones, like Bitcoin?
That's where things get really interesting. With Bitcoin, there's no central bank, no one making those calls.
Right.
The system runs itself based on a set of rules built into the blockchain. For example, with Bitcoin, the total number of coins is capped.
So no one can just decide to make more Bitcoin.
Nope. It's limited to 21 million.
That's crazy.
It is, and that's a huge difference between decentralized cryptocurrencies and those government-backed CBDCs. Governments, they are trying to keep some control with those.
Yeah.
They could potentially offer the stability of regular money, but with the efficiency of digital transactions, but the design of these systems, that's really going to matter.
It all sounds super complex.
It is complex.
But is any of this actually affecting regular people yet?
Right.
Are people using these digital currencies out there in the real world?
It's a great question, and you might be surprised by the answer. Let's look at some real data on how much digital currency is actually being used. Ready for some mind-blowing stats?
Hit me with them. I'm ready to be surprised.
So globally, around 6.8% of people own at least some cryptocurrency.
Wow.
That's over 560 million users
Worldwide.
worldwide. And in some countries, that percentage is way higher.
Really?
Oh yeah, like India, Indonesia, Nigeria. It's a global thing.
That's way more people than I would guessed. What about those massive transaction volumes you always hear about? Are people using crypto to actually buy stuff?
They are. In 2023, stablecoin transactions hit almost $7 trillion.
Whoa, wait. Stablecoins?
Right, those are digital currencies that are pegged to, like the US dollar.
Oh, okay.
So they offer that ease of digital transactions, but without so much volatility.
Okay, so $7 trillion. That's a massive number.
It is.
How does that compare to, like, the old school payment systems?
Let's see, MasterCard processed something like $9 trillion in 2023.
Okay.
PayPal was around $1.5 trillion.
So stablecoins are catching up.
Oh yeah, they're getting there. And get this, global crypto trading volume is expected to be over $108 trillion in 2024.
These numbers are kind of blowing my mind.
It's a lot to take in.
Even if fiat currency is still the main thing, it seems like digital currency is growing super fast.
For sure. And it makes you wonder what's in it for the average person.
Exactly. Like, what are the pros and cons for someone like me?
Well, let's start with what we know, fiat currency. It's pretty stable, it's widely accepted, backed by governments.
Yeah, it's familiar.
So there's that sense of security. Plus, pretty well-established consumer protections.
Right. It generally feels safe.
Yeah.
But what about the downsides?
Sure.
Like earlier we talked about hyperinflation and governments kind of manipulating things.
Hmm.
Are those realistic concerns?
Yeah, they are potential risks. And they highlight a big drawback of fiat currency. It's centralized and subject to government control.
So you're saying they can do whatever they want with the money supply?
To an extent, yeah. They can print more money, which, if they're not careful, can lead to inflation. And they can put restrictions on how you use your money.
That doesn't sound great.
Not ideal.
Okay, so what about digital currencies?
Yeah.
Do they solve any of those problems?
Well, they could offer some solutions, but they come with their own pluses and minuses.
Okay.
One potential upside is efficiency.
Okay.
Digital transactions can be way faster and cheaper, especially for international payments.
That makes sense. And I've heard people talk about financial inclusion, like digital currencies can help people who don't have bank accounts.
Absolutely. That's a huge potential benefit, especially in developing countries.
Hmm.
Digital currencies could give millions of people access to financial services that they couldn't get before.
That's a big deal for those communities.
It is.
What about those decentralization benefits we talked about with crypto?
Right.
What does that mean for everyday users?
Well, for one, it could mean your money is more resistant to censorship or seizure by the government.
Okay.
It could give you more control over your own finances without relying on a bank.
I can definitely see the appeal in that. But what about the downsides of digital currencies? I've heard they can be volatile, risky.
Yeah, that's true. Especially with cryptocurrencies, their value can fluctuate a lot, which makes them a risky investment. And there's always the risk of scams and hacks.
Okay.
The whole space is still relatively unregulated.
So probably not the safest place to put your life savings.
Probably not your life savings, no.
Ugh.
What about consumer protections?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
if something goes wrong with a digital transaction, who do you call?
Right. Who do you turn to?
That's a key difference. With
Right.
crypto, once you make a transaction, it's basically irreversible. There's no central authority to, like, step in and fix things.
So it's kind of a buyer beware situation.
Pretty much. You need to be really careful, do your research, especially before investing.
Good advice. So it sounds like both fiat currency and digital currencies have their good and bad points.
Totally. It's not a clear cut, like, this one's better. It's about understanding the trade-offs, figuring out what fits your needs and your risk tolerance.
Right. There's no one right answer.
Yeah.
But how do we even begin to make those decisions?
Yeah.
It feels like the whole financial landscape is changing so fast.
Yeah.
What does the future hold for money, and how can we be ready for it?
Those are the big questions. And we don't have a crystal ball, but we can look at some trends. One possibility is a gradual evolution, with both systems coexisting, maybe even integrating over time.
So like a hybrid system.
Yeah, like imagine using your bank accounts and your digital wallets with transactions flowing between them.
That actually sounds pretty convenient.
Right.
What about those more extreme predictions?
Yes.
Like, could cryptocurrency really take over the whole financial system?
It's not impossible, but it's got some big challenges. Scalability, regulation, widespread adoption, those are all hurdles.
Right. It does feel like we're still in the early days of this whole digital currency thing.
We are, but things are changing fast. Another scenario to think about is the rise of CBDCs.
Oh, yeah. Those are still a bit of a mystery to me. How do you see them impacting the future of money?
It really depends how they're designed and how they're implemented. They could potentially offer the best of both worlds, that stability of fiat currency,
Yeah.
but with the efficiency of digital.
It could be a game changer then.
Potentially, but there are also concerns. Privacy, government control.
Right.
Like if governments have too much power over people's money, that could be a problem.
That's a good point. It seems like this whole digital currency thing has a lot of potential benefits,
Yeah,
but there's some serious risks that we need to be aware of.
absolutely. That's why it's so important to stay informed,
Yeah.
educate yourself. The more you understand about how all of this works, both old and new, the better decisions you'll make about your own finances.
This has been eye-opening. I feel like I have a much better grasp of all these different currencies and what it means for me.
I'm glad to hear that. But we're not done yet. In the last part of our deep dive, we'll explore some actual steps you can take to navigate all of this.
Sounds good. Stay with us, listeners. We'll be right back to wrap things up. Okay, we're back, ready to wrap up our deep dive into the world of money. We've covered a lot of ground, right?
We have history of fiat currency, the rise of digital currencies like Bitcoin, and those CBDCs that governments are working on.
So much to think about.
It is, but let's bring it home. What does all this mean for you, the listener? How can you make sense of it all and make good decisions with your own money?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is, literally. But where do we even start?
Yeah, it's a lot to process.
The first step is simple. Stay curious, keep learning. The financial world is always changing, so you gotta keep up.
Easier said than done. It's like trying to drink from a fire hose sometimes. Where do I even start?
You're right, it can be overwhelming. But there are tons of resources out there. Reputable financial news sites, online courses,
Oh.
stuff that can break down all this cryptocurrency and blockchain stuff.
So do your homework, be skeptical of what you see online, especially on social media.
Definitely. Not everything you read is true, especially when it comes to money. Ask questions, be discerning. Don't be afraid to talk to a financial professional you trust.
Makes sense. So once we've got the basics down, what are some practical things we can do to manage our money in this new world?
Diversification is a big one.
Okay.
You know that saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket?
Uh-huh.
It applies to currencies too. Think about spreading your assets around. Fiat currency, stable coins, maybe even a little crypto if you're comfortable with the risk.
So like a balanced portfolio, just like with regular investments.
Exactly. The key is to figure out your own risk tolerance, your financial goals, and go from there.
All right, there's no one-size-fits-all solution. Speaking of risks, what about security? I imagine digital currencies come with their own challenges.
Absolutely. Security is crucial in the digital world. If you're holding cryptocurrency, you need to be super careful about those private keys.
Okay.
Think of it like protecting the combination to your safe.
So maybe don't write your Bitcoin password on a sticky note.
Definitely not. Use a secure wallet, follow best practices for online security, be careful about phishing scams, suspicious links, all that stuff.
A lot to be cautious about,
Uh-huh.
but there's also this feeling of excitement, right? It
Yeah.
feels like we're on the edge of a huge shift in how we think about and use money.
Totally agree. We're living through a financial revolution,
Yeah.
and the potential for positive change is huge. Just remember, knowledge is power.
Well said. Any final words of wisdom for our listeners as they head into this new financial frontier?
Embrace that curiosity and
Uh,
keep learning. Don't be afraid to experiment a bit. Try new technologies. But do it responsibly. Understand the risks. The future of money is being shaped right now, and you can be a part of it.
What a great message to end on. This has been an incredible journey exploring the world of fiat and digital currency. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
My pleasure. Remember, the future of finance is in your hands. Stay informed, stay curious, and stay engaged.